Gollum had just begun to sneak off on his own, and he was crawling away on all fours through the fern. "Hi, Gollum," said Sam. "Where are you going?" "Hunting." "Well, see here, old noser, you don't like our food, and I'd not be sorry for a change myself. Your new motto's always ready to help. Could you find anything fit for a hungry hobbit?"
"Yes, perhaps, yes," said Gollum. "Smeagol always helps if they asks nicely."
"Right," said Sam. "I does ask, and if that isn't nice enough, I begs." Gollum disappeared. He was away some time, and Frodo, after a few mouthfuls of lembas, settled deep into the brown fern and went to sleep. Sam looked at him. The early daylight was only just creeping down into the shadows under the trees, but he saw his master's face very clearly, and his hands, too, lying at rest on the ground beside him. He was reminded suddenly of Frodo, as he'd lain asleep in the house of Elrond after his deadly wound. Then, as he'd kept watch, Sam had noticed that at times a light seemed to be shining faintly within, but now the light was even clearer and stronger. Frodo's face was peaceful. The marks of fear and care had left it, but it looked old and beautiful, as if the chiseling of the shaping years was now revealed in many fine lines that had before been hidden, though the identity of the face was not changed. Not that Sam Gamgee put it that way to himself. He shook his head, as if finding words useless, and murmured, "I love him. He's like that, and sometimes it shines through somehow, but I love him, whether or no." Gollum returned quietly and peered over Sam's shoulder. Looking at Frodo, he shut his eyes and crawled away without a sound. Sam came to him a moment later and found him chewing something and muttering to himself. On the ground beside him lay two small rabbits, which he was beginning to eye greedily.
"Smeagol always helps," he said. "He's brought rabbits, nice rabbits. But Master has gone to sleep, and perhaps Sam wants to sleep. Doesn't want rabbits now. Smeagol tries to help, but he can't catch things all in a minute."
Sam, however, had no objection to rabbit at all, and said so. At least, not to cooked rabbits. All hobbits, of course, can cook, for they begin to learn the art before their letters, which many never reach. But Sam was a good cook, even by hobbit reckoning, and he'd done a good deal of the camp cooking on their travels when there was a chance. He still hopefully carried some of his gear in his pack: a small tinder box, two small shallow pans, the smaller fitting into the larger, inside them a wooden spoon, a short two-pronged fork, and some skewers were stowed, and hidden at the bottom of the pack in a flat wooden box a dwindling treasure of some sort. But he needed a fire and other things besides. He thought for a bit, while he took out his knife, cleaned and wetted it, and began to dress the rabbits. He wasn't going to leave Frodo alone asleep even for a few minutes. "Now, Gollum," he said, "I've another job for you. Go and fill these pans with water and bring it back."
"Smeagol will fetch water, yes," said Gollum. "But what does the hobbit want all that water for? He's drunk, he's washed."
"Never you mind," said Sam. "If you can't guess, you'll soon find out. And the sooner you fetch the water, the sooner you'll learn. Don't you damage one of my pans, or I'll carve you into mincemeat." While Gollum was away, Sam took another look at Frodo. He was still sleeping quietly, but Sam was now struck most by the leanness of his face and hands. "Too thin and drawn he is," he muttered. "Not right for a hobbit. If I can get these conies cooked, I'm going to wake him up." Sam gathered a pile of the driest fern, and then scrambled up the bank, collecting a bundle of twigs and broken wood. The fallen branch of a cedar at the top gave him a good supply. He cut out some turfs at the foot of the bank just outside the fern brake and made a shallow hole and laid his fuel in it. Being handy with flint and tinder, he soon had a small blaze going. It made little or no smoke, but gave off an aromatic scent. He was just stooping over his fire, shielding it and building it up with heavier wood, when Gollum returned, carrying the pans carefully and grumbling to himself. He set the pans down, and then suddenly saw what Sam was doing. He gave a thin, hissing shriek, and seemed to be both frightened and angry.
Ah, no, he cried. No, silly hobbits. Foolish, yes, foolish. They mustn't do it.
Mustn't do what? Asked Sam in surprise.
Not make the nasty red tongues, hissed Gollum. Fire, fire, it's dangerous. Yes, it is. It burns, it kills, and it will bring enemies. Yes, it will.
I don't think so, said Sam. Don't see why it should, if you don't put wet stuff on it and make a smother. But if it does, it does. I'm going to risk it anyhow. I'm going to stew these conies.
Stew the rabbits,
squealed Gollum in dismay.
Spoiled beautiful meat Smeagol saved for you, poor hungry Smeagol. What for? What for, silly hobbit? They're young, they're tender, they're nice. Eat them, eat them.
He clawed at the nearest rabbit, already skinned and lying by the fire. Now, now, said Sam, each to his own fashion. Our bread chokes you, and raw coney chokes me. If you give me a coney, the coney's mine, see, to cook if I have a mind, and I have. You needn't watch me. Go and catch another and eat it as you fancy, somewhere private and out of my sight. Then you won't see the fire, and I shan't see you, and we'll both be the happier. I'll see the fire don't smoke, if that's any comfort to you. Gollum withdrew grumbling, and crawled into the fern. Sam busied himself with his pans. What a hobbit needs with coney, he said to himself, is some herbs and roots, especially taters, not to mention bread. Herbs we can manage, seemingly. Gollum, he called softly. Third time pays for all. I want some herbs. Gollum's head peeped out of the fern, but his looks were neither helpful nor friendly. A few bay leaves, some thyme and sage will do, before the water boils, said Sam.
No, said Gollum. Smeagol is not pleased, and Smeagol doesn't like smelly leaves. He doesn't eat grasses or roots. No, precious, not till he's starving or very sick, poor Smeagol.
Smeagol'll get into real true hot water when this water boils, if he don't do as he's asked, growled Sam. Sam'll put his head in it, yes, precious, and I'll make him look for turnips and carrots and taters too. If it was the time of the year, I'll bet there's all sorts of good things running wild in this country. I'd give a lot for half a dozen taters.
Smeagol won't go. Oh no, precious, not this time.
Be good, Smeagol, and fetch me the herbs, and I'll be better of you.
Not sure what happened there, y'all.
Turn over a new leaf, and keep it turned. I'll cook you some taters one of these days. I will. Fried fish and chips served by S. Gamgee. You couldn't say no to that.
Yes, we could. Spoiling nice fish, scorching it. Give me fish now, and keep nasty chips.
Oh, you're hopeless, said Sam. Go to sleep. In the end, he had to find what he wanted for himself. But he didn't have to go far, not out of sight of the place where his master lay, still sleeping. For a while, Sam sat musing, and tending the fire till the water boiled. The daylight grew, and the air became warm. The dew faded off turf and leaf. Soon the rabbits cut up lay simmering in their pans with the bunched herbs. Almost Sam fell asleep as the time went by. He let them stew for close on an hour, testing them now and again with his fork and tasting the broth. When he thought all was ready, he lifted the pans off the fire and crept along to Frodo. Frodo half opened his eyes as Sam stood over him, and then he wakened from his dreaming, another gentle, unrecoverable dream of peace. "Hello, Sam," he said. "Not resting? Is anything wrong? What's the time?" "About a couple of hours after daybreak," said Sam, "and nigh on 8:30 by shire clocks, maybe. But nothing's wrong, though it ain't quite what I'd call right. No stock, no onions, no taters. I've got a bit of stew for you, and some broth, Mr. Frodo. Do you good. You'll have to sup it in your mug, or straight from the pan when it's cooled a bit. I haven't brought no bowls, nor nothing proper." Frodo yawned and stretched. "You should have been resting, Sam," he said. "And lighting a fire was dangerous in these parts. And I do feel hungry. Can I smell it from here? What have you stewed?" "A present from Smeagol," said Sam. "A brace of young conies, though I fancy Gollum's regretting them now. But there's naught to go with them but a few herbs." Sam and his master sat down within the fern brake and ate their stew from the pans, sharing the old fork and spoon. They allowed themselves half a piece of the elvish way bread each. It seemed a feast. "Whee! Gollum!" Sam called and whistled softly. "Come on! Still time to change your mind. There's some left if you want to try some stewed coney." There was no answer. "Oh, well, I suppose he's gone off to find something for himself. We'll finish it," said Sam. "And then you must take some sleep," said Frodo. "Don't you drop off while I'm nodding, Mr. Frodo. I don't feel too sure of him. There's a good deal of stinker, the bad Gollum, if you understand me, in him still, and it's getting stronger again. Not but what I think he'd try to throttle me first now. We don't see eye to eye, and he's not pleased with Sam. Oh, no, precious, not pleased at all." They finished, and Sam went off to the stream to rinse his gear. As he stood up to return, he looked back to the slope. At that moment he saw the sun rise out of the reeks, or haze, or dark shadow, or whatever it was that lay ever to the east, and it sent its golden beams down upon the trees and glades about him. Then he noticed a thin spiral of blue-grey smoke, plain to see as it caught the sunlight, rising from a thicket above him. With a shock, he realized that this was the smoke from his little cooking fire, which he'd neglected to put out. "That won't do. Never thought it would show like that," he muttered, as he started to hurry back. Suddenly he halted and listened. Had he heard a whistle or not? Or was it the call of some strange bird? If it was a whistle, it didn't come from Frodo's direction. There it went again from another place. Sam began to run as well as he could uphill. He found that a small brand, burning away to its outer end, had kindled some fern at the edge of the fire, and the fern blazing up had set the turf smouldering. Hastily he stamped out what was left of the fire, scattering the ashes, and laid the turves on the whole. Then he crept back to Frodo. "Did you hear a whistle, and what sounded like an answer?" he asked. "A few minutes back. I hope it was only a bird, but it didn't sound quite like that. More like somebody mimicking a bird call, I thought. And I'm afraid my bit of fire's been smoking. Now, if I've gone and brought trouble, I'll never forgive myself, nor won't have a chance, maybe." "Hush," whispered Frodo. "I thought I heard voices." The two hobbits trussed their small packs, put them on ready for flight, and then crawled deeper into the fern. There they crouched, listening. There was no doubt of the voices. They were speaking low and furtively, but they were near and coming nearer. Then, quite suddenly, one spoke clearly close at hand. "Here's where the smoke came from," it said. "'Twill be nigh at hand," In the fern, no doubt. We shall have it like a coney in a trap. Then we shall learn what kind of thing it is. Aye, and what it knows, said a second voice. At once 4 men came striding through the fern from different directions. Since flight and hiding were no longer possible, Frodo and Sam sprang to their feet, putting back to back and whipping out their small swords. If they were astonished at what they saw, their captors were even more astonished. 4 tall men stood there. 2 had spears in their hands with broad, bright heads. 2 had great bows, almost of their own height, and great quivers of long, green feathered arrows. All had swords at their sides, and were clad in green and brown of varied hues, as if the better to walk unseen in the glades of Ithilien. Green gauntlets covered their hands, and their faces were hooded and masked with green, except for their eyes, which were very keen and bright. At once Frodo thought of Boromir, for these men were like him in stature and bearing, and in their manner of speech. "We have not found what we sought," said one. "But what have we found?" "Not orcs," said another, releasing the hilt of his sword, which he had seized when he saw the glitter of sting in Frodo's hand. "Elves?" said a third, doubtfully. "Nay, not elves," said the fourth, the tallest, and as it appeared, the chief among them. "Elves don't walk in Ithilien in these days, and elves are wondrous fair to look upon, or so to say." "Meaning we're not, I take it," said Sam. "Thank you kindly. And when you've finished discussing us, perhaps you'll say who you are, and why you can't let 2 tired travellers rest?" The tall green man laughed grimly. "I'm Faramir, captain of Gondor," he said. "But there are no travellers in this land, only the servants of the Dark Tower, or of the White." "But we're neither," said Frodo, "and travellers we are, whatever Captain Faramir may say." "Then make haste to declare yourselves and your errand," said Faramir. "We have a work to do, and this is no time or place for riddling or parleying. Come, where's the third of your company?" "The third?" "Yes, the skulking fellow that we saw with his nose in the pool down yonder. He had an ill-favoured look. Some spying breed of orc, I guess, or a creature of theirs, but he gave us the slip by some fox trick." "I don't know where he is," said Frodo. "He's only a chance companion met upon the road, and I'm not answerable for him. If you come on him, spare him. Bring him or send him to us. He's only a wretched gangrel creature, but I have him under my care for a while. But as for us, we are hobbits of the Shire, far to the north and west, beyond many rivers. Frodo, son of Drogo, is my name, and with me is Samwise, son of Hamfast, a worthy hobbit in my service. We have come by long ways, out of Rivendell, or Imladris, as some call it." Here Faramir started and grew intent. 7 companions we had. 1 we lost at Moria. The others we left at Path Garlan above Rauros. 2 of my kin, a dwarf there was also, and an elf, and 2 men. They were Aragorn and Boromir, who said that he came out of Minas Tirith, a city in the south. "Boromir!" all the 4 men exclaimed. "Boromir, son of the Lord Denethor," said Faramir, and a strange stern look came into his face. "You came with him? That's news indeed, if it be true. Know, little strangers, that Boromir, son of Denethor, was High Warden of the White Tower, and our Captain General. Sorely do we miss him. Who are you then? And what had you to do with him? Be swift, for the sun is climbing." "Are the riddling words known to you that Boromir brought to Rivendell?" Frodo replied. "Seek for the sword that was broken. In Imladris it dwells." "The words are known indeed," said Faramir in astonishment. "It is some token of your truth that you also know them." "Aragorn, whom I named, is the bearer of the sword that was broken," said Frodo, "and we are the halflings that the rhyme spoke of." "That I see," said Faramir thoughtfully. "Or I see that it might be so. And what is Isildur's bane?" "That is hidden," answered Frodo. "Doubtless it will be made clear in time." "We must learn more of this," said Faramir, and know what brings you so far east under the shadow of yonder. He pointed and said no name. But not now. We have business in hand. You are in peril, and you would not have gone far by field or road this day. There will be hard handstrokes nigh at hand ere the day is full. Then death or swift flight back to Anduin. I will leave two to guard you, for your good and for mine. Wise man trusts not to chance meeting on the road in this land. If I return, I'll speak more with you. Farewell, said Frodo, bowing low. Think what you will. I am a friend of all enemies of the one enemy. We would go with you, if we halfling folk could hope to serve you, such doughty men and strong as you seem, and if my errand permitted it, may the light shine on your swords. The halflings are courteous folk, whatever else they be, said Faramir. Farewell. The hobbits sat down again, but they said nothing to one another of their thoughts and doubts. Close by, just under the dappling shadow of the dark bay trees, two men remained on guard. They took off their masks now and again to cool them as the day heat grew, and Frodo saw that they were goodly men, pale-skinned, dark of hair, with grey eyes and faces sad and proud. They spoke together in soft voices, at first using the common speech, but after the manner of older days, and then changing to another language of their own. To his amazement, as he listened, Frodo became aware that it was the elven tongue that they spoke, or one but little different, and he looked at them with wonder, for he knew then that they must be Dunedain of the south, men of the line of the lords of Westerness. After a while he spoke to them, but they were slow and cautious in answering. They named themselves Mablung and Damrod, soldiers of Gondor, and they were rangers of Ithilien, for they were descended from folk who lived in Ithilien at one time, before it was overrun. From such men the Lord Denethor chose his 4 heirs, who crossed the Anduin secretly, how or where they would not say, to harry the orcs and other enemies that roamed between the Ethel Duath and the river. It is close on 10 leagues hence to the east shore of Anduin, said Mablung, and we seldom come so far afield. But we have a new errand on this journey. We come to ambush the men of Harad. Curse them. Aye, curse the Southrons, said Damrod. 'Tis said that there were dealings of old between Gondor and the kingdoms of the Harad in the far south, though there was never friendship. In those days our bounds were away south beyond the mouths of Anduin, and Umbar, the nearest of their realms, acknowledged our sway. But that is long since. 'Tis many lives of men since any passed to or fro between us. Now of late we've learned that the enemy has been among them, and they are gone over to him, or back to him. They were ever ready to his will, as have so many also in the east. I doubt not that the days of Gondor are numbered, and the walls of Minas Tirith are doomed, so great is his strength and malice. But still, we will not sit idle and let him do all as he would, said Mablung. These cursed Southrons come now marching up the ancient roads to swell the hosts of the Dark Tower, yea, up the very roads that craft of Gondor made, and they go ever more heedlessly, we learn, thinking that the power of their new master is great enough, so that the mere shadow of his hills will protect them. We come to teach them another lesson. Great strength of them was reported to us some days ago, marching north. One of their regiments is due, by our reckoning, to pass by, sometime ere noon, up on the road above, where it passes through the Cloven Way. The road may pass, but they shall not while Faramir is captain. He leads now in all perilous ventures, but his life is charmed, or fate spares him for some other end. Their talk died down into a listening silence. All seemed still and watchful. Sam, crouched by the edge of the fernbrake, peered out. With his keen hobbit eyes, he saw that many more men were about. He could see them stealing up the slopes, singly or in long files, keeping always to the shade of grove or thicket, or crawling, hardly visible in their brown and green raiment, through grass and brake. All were hooded and masked, and had gauntlets on their hands, and were armed like Faramir and his companions. Before long they had all passed and vanished. The sun rose till it neared the south. The shadows shrank. I wonder where that dratted Gollum is, thought Sam, as he crawled back into deeper shade. He stands a fair chance of being spitted for an orc, or of being roasted by the yellow face, but I fancy he'll look after himself. He lay down beside Frodo and began to doze. He woke, thinking that he had heard horns blowing. He sat up. It was now high noon.
Give me 1 second,
The guards
I'll
stood
be
alert
right
and
back.
tense in the shadow of the trees. Suddenly the horn got louder, and beyond mistake from above, over the top of the slope. Sam thought that he heard cries and wild shouting also, but the sound was faint, as if it came out of some distant cave. Then presently the noise of fighting broke out near at hand, just above their hiding place. He could hear plainly the ringing grate of steel on steel, the clang of sword on iron cap, the dull beat of blade on shield. Men were yelling and screaming, and one clear, loud voice was calling, "Gondor! Gondor!" "It sounds like 100 blacksmiths all smithying together," said Sam to Frodo. "They're as near as I want them now." But the noise grew closer. "They're coming," cried Damrod. "See, some of the Southrons have broken from the trap and are flying from the road. There they go. Our men after them, and the captain leading." Sam, eager to see more, went now and joined the guards. He scrambled a little way up into one of the larger of the bay trees. For a moment he caught a glimpse of swarthy men in red, running down the slope some way off, with green-clad warriors leaping after them, hewing them down as they fled. Arrows were thick in the air. Then suddenly, straight over the rim of their sheltering bank, a man fell, crashing through the slender trees, nearly on top of them. He came to rest in the fern a few feet away, face downward, green arrow feathers sticking from his neck below a golden collar. His scarlet robes were tattered. His corselet of overlapping brazen plate was rent and hewn. His black plaits of hair, braided with gold, were drenched with blood. His brown hand still clutched the hilt of a broken sword. It was Sam's first view of a battle of men against men, and he did not like it much. He was glad that he could not see the dead face. He wondered what the man's name was, and where he came from, and if he was really evil at heart, or what lies or threats had led him on the long march from his home, and if he would not really rather have stayed there in peace. All in a flash of thought, which was quickly driven from his mind. For just as Mablung stepped towards the fallen body, there was a new noise, great crying and shouting. Amidst it, Sam heard a shrill bellowing or trumpeting, and then a great thudding and bumping, like huge rams dinning on the ground. "Where? Where?" cried Damrod to his companion. "May the Valar turn him aside. Mumark! Mumark!" To his astonishment and terror and lasting delight, Sam saw a vast shape crash out of the trees and come careering down the slope. Big as a house, much bigger than a house. It looked to him a grey-clad moving hill. Fear and wonder, maybe, enlarged him in the hobbit's eyes, but the Mumark of Harad was indeed a beast of vast bulk, and the like of him does not walk now in Middle-earth. His kin that live still in latter days are but memories of his girth and majesty. On he came, straight towards the watchers, and then swerved aside in the nick of time, passing only a few yards away, rocking the ground beneath their feet. His great legs like trees, enormous sail-like ears spread out, long snout upraised like a huge serpent about to strike, his small red eyes raging. His upturned horn-like tusks were bound with bands of gold and dripping with blood. His trappings of scarlet and gold flapped about him in wild tatters. The ruins of what seemed a very war tower lay upon his heaving back, smashed in his furious passage through the woods, and high upon his neck still desperately clung a tiny figure, the body of a mighty warrior, a giant among the Swertings. On the great beast thundered, blundering in blind wrath through pool and thicket. Arrows skipped and snapped harmlessly about the triple hide of his flanks. Men of both sides fled before him, but many he overtook and crushed to the ground. Soon he was lost to view, still trumpeting and stamping far away. What became of him, Sam never heard. Whether he escaped to roam the wild for a time until he perished far from his home or was trapped in some deep pit, or whether he raged on until he plunged in the great river and was swallowed up. Sam drew a deep breath. An oliphant it was, he said. So there are oliphants, and I've seen one. What a life! But no one at home will ever believe me. Well, if that's over, I'll have a bit of sleep. Sleep while you may, said Madeline, but the captain will return if he's unhurt, and when he comes we shall depart swiftly. We shall be pursued as soon as news of our deed reaches the enemy, and that will not be long. Go quietly when you must, said Sam. No need to disturb my sleep. I was walking all night. Madeline laughed. I don't think the captain will leave you here, Master Samwise, he said, but you shall see. Chapter 5. The Window on the West. It seemed to Sam that he had only dozed for a few minutes when he awoke to find that it was late afternoon and Faramir had come back. He had brought many men with him. Indeed, all the survivors of the foray were now gathered on the slope nearby, 200 or 300 strong. They sat in a wide semicircle between the arms of which Faramir was seated on the ground, whilst Frodo stood before him. It looked strangely like the trial of a prisoner. Sam crept out from the fern, but no one paid any attention to him, and he placed himself at the end of the rows of men, where he could see and hear all that was going on. He watched and listened intently, ready to dash to his master's aid if needed. He could see Faramir's face, which was now unmasked. It was stern and commanding, and a keen wit lay behind his searching glance. Doubt was in the grey eyes that gazed steadily at Frodo. Sam soon became aware that the captain was not satisfied with Frodo's account of himself at several points. What part he had to play in the company in Rivendell, why he had Boromir, and where he was now going. In particular, he referred to Frodo's veins. Mainly, he saw that Frodo was concealing from him something of great importance. But it was at the coming of the halfling that Isildur's bane should waken, or so one must read the words. He insisted. If then you're the halfling that was named, doubtless you brought this thing, whatever it may be, to the council of which you speak. I saw it. Do you deny it? Frodo made no answer. No, said Faramir. I wish then to learn from you more of it. For what concerns Boromir concerns me. An orc arrow slew Isildur, so far as old tales tell. Orc arrows are plenty. The sight of one would not be taken as a sign of doom by Boromir of Gondor. Had you this thing in keeping? It is hidden, you say. But is not that because you choose to hide it? No, not because I choose, answered Frodo. It does not belong to me. It does not belong to any mortal, great or small, though if any would claim it. Aragorn, son of Arathorn, named the leader of our company, Why so? And not Boromir, prince of the city that the sons of Elendil founded? Because Aragorn is descended in direct lineage from Elendil's son himself, and the sword that he bears was Elendil's sword. A murmur of astonishment ran through all the ring of men. Some cried aloud, "The sword of Elendil! The sword of Elendil comes to minister at great tidings." But Faramir's face was unmoved. Maybe, he said, but so great a claim will need to be established, and clear proofs will be required should this Aragorn come to minister. He had not come, nor any of your company, when I set out 6 days ago. Boromir was satisfied of that claim, said Frodo. Indeed, if Boromir were here, he would answer all your questions. And since he was already at Rauros many days back, and intended then to go straight to your city if you return, you may soon learn the answers there. My part in the company as to all the The others pointed to me. I and the address himself before the whole council. On that errand I came into this country. But it is not mine to reveal to any outside the company. Yet those who claim to oppose the enemy would do well not to hinder it. Frodo's tone was proud, whatever he felt, and Sam approved of it, but it did not appease Faramir. So, he said, you bid me mind my own affairs and get me back home and let you be? Boromir will tell all when he comes. When he comes, say you, were you a friend of Boromir's? Vividly before Frodo's mind came the memory of Boromir's assault upon him, and for a moment he hesitated. Faramir's eyes watching him grew harder. Boromir was a valiant member of our company, said Frodo at length. Yes, I was his friend for my part. Faramir smiled grimly. Then you would grieve to learn that Boromir is dead? I would grieve, said Frodo. Then, catching the look in Faramir's eyes, he faltered. Dead, he said. Do you mean that he is dead, and that you knew it? You've been trying to trap me in words, playing with me. Or are you now trying to snare me with a falsehood? I would not snare even an orc with a falsehood, said Faramir. How then did he die? And how do you know of it? Since you say that none of the company had reached the city when you left. As to the manner of his death, I had hoped that his friend and companion would tell me how it was. But he was alive and strong when we parted, and he lives still for all that I know, though surely there are many perils in the world. Many indeed, said Faramir, and treachery not the least. Sam had been getting more and more impatient and angry at this conversation. These last words were more than he could bear, and bursting into the middle of the ring, he strode up to his master's side. Begging your pardon, Mr. Frodo, he said, but this has gone on long enough. He's no right to talk to you so. After all you've been through, as much for his good and for all these great men as for anyone else. See here, Captain. He planted himself squarely in front of Faramir, his hands on his hips, and a look on his face as if he was addressing a young hobbit who had offered him what he called sauce when questioned about visits to the orchard. There was some murmuring, but also some grins on the faces of the men looking on. The sight of their captain sitting on the ground, and eye to eye with the young hobbit, legs well apart, bristling with wrath, was one beyond their experience. See here, he said, what are you driving at? Let's come to the point before all the orcs of Mordor come down on us. If you think you murdered this Boromir and then ran away, you've got no sense. But say it, and have done. And then let us know what you mean to do about it. But it's a pity that folks talk about fighting the enemy, can't let others do their bit in their own way without interfering. He'd be mighty pleased if he could see you now. Think he got a new friend, he would. Patience, said Faramir, but without anger. Do not speak before your master, whose wit is greater than yours, and I do not need any to teach me of our peril. Even so, I spare a brief time in order to judge justly in a hard matter. Were I as hasty as you, I might have slain you long ago. For I am commanded to slay all whom I find in this land without the leave of the Lord of Gondor. But I do not slay man or beast needlessly, and not gladly, even when it is needed. Neither do I talk in vain. So be comforted. Sit by your master and be silent. Sam sat down heavily with a red face. Faramir turned to Frodo again. You asked, how do I know that the son of Denethor is dead? Tidings of death of many wings. Night oft brings news to near kindred, he said. Boromir was my brother. A shadow of sorrow passed over his face. Do you remember aught of special mark the Lord Boromir bore with him among his gear? Frodo thought for a moment, fearing some further trap, and wondering how this debate would turn in the end. He had hardly saved the ring from the proud grasp of Boromir, and how he would fare now among so many men, warlike and strong, he did not know. Yet he felt in his heart that Faramir, though he was much like his brother in looks, was a man less self-regarding, both sterner and wiser. "I remember that Boromir bore a horn," he said at last. "You remember well, and as one who has in truth seen him," said Faramir. "Then maybe you can see it in your mind's eye, a great horn of the wild ox of the east, bound with silver and written with ancient characters. That horn the eldest son of our house has borne for many generations, and it is said that if it be blown at need, anywhere within the bounds of Gondor, as the realm was of old, its voice will not pass unheeded. 5 days ere I set out on this adventure, 11 days ago at about this hour of the day, I heard the blowing of that horn. From the northward it seemed, but dim, as if it were but an echo in the mind. A boding of ill we thought it, my father and I, for no tidings had we heard of Boromir since he went away, and no watcher on our borders had seen him pass. And on the third night after, another and a stranger thing befell me. I sat at night by the waters of Anduin, in the grey dark, under the young pale moon, watching the ever-moving stream, and the sad reeds were rustling. So do we ever watch the shores near Osgiliath, which our enemies now partly hold, and issue from it to harry our lands. But that night all the world slept at the midnight hour. Then I saw, or it seemed that I saw, a boat floating on the water, glimmering grey, a small boat of a strong fashion with a high prow, and there was none to row or steer it. An awe fell on me, for a pale light was round it. But I rose and went to the bank, and began to walk out into the stream, for I was drawn towards it. Then the boat turned towards me, and stayed its pace, and floated slowly by within my hand's reach, yet I durst not handle it. It waded deep, as if it were heavily burdened, and it seemed to me, as it passed under my gaze, that it was almost filled with clear water, from which came the light, and lapped in the water a warrior lay asleep. A broken sword was on his knee. I saw many wounds on him. It was Boromir, my brother, dead. I knew his gear, his sword, his beloved face. One thing only I missed, his horn. One thing only I knew not, a fair belt, as it were of linked golden leaves, about his waist. "Boromir," I cried, "where is thy horn? Whither goest thou, O Boromir?" But he was gone. The boat turned into the stream and passed, glimmering on into the night. Dream like it was, and yet no dream, for there was no waking, and I do not doubt that he is dead and has passed down the river to the sea. "Alas," said Frodo, "that was indeed Boromir as I knew him, for the golden belt was given to him in Lothlorien by the Lady Galadriel. She it was that clothed us as you see us, in elven grey. This brooch is of the same workmanship." He touched the green and silver leaf that fastened his cloak beneath his throat. Faramir looked closely at it. "It is beautiful," he said. "Yes, it is work of the same craft. So then you passed through the land of Lorien? Laurel Doranen, as it was named of old. But long now it has lain beyond the knowledge of men," he added softly, regarding Frodo with a new wonder in his eyes. "Much that was strange about you I begin now to understand. Will you not tell me more? For it is a bitter thought that Boromir died within sight of the land of his home." "No more can I say than I have said," answered Frodo, "though your tale fills me with foreboding. A vision it was that you saw, I think, and no more, some shadow of evil fortune that has been or will be. Unless, indeed, it is some lying trick of the enemy. I have seen the faces of fair warriors of old laid in sleep beneath the pools of the dead marshes, or seeming so by his foul arts." "Nay, it was not so," said Faramir, "for his works fill the heart with loathing, but my heart was filled with grief and pity." "Yet how could such a thing have happened in truth?" asked Frodo. "For no boat could have been carried over the stony hills from Tall Brandir." Boromir purposed to go home along the Entwash and the fields of Rohan. And yet how could any vessel ride the foam of the great falls and not founder in the boiling pools, though laden with water? I know not, said Faramir, but whence came the boat? From Lorien, said Frodo. In 3 such boats we rode down the Anduin to the falls. They also were of elven work. You passed through the hidden land, said Faramir, but it seems that you little understood its power. If men have dealings with the mistress of magic who dwells in the Golden Wood, then they may look for strange things to follow. For it is perilous for mortal man to walk out to the world of the sun, and few of old ever came thence unchanged, it said. Boromir, oh Boromir, he cried, what did she say to you, the lady that dies not? What did she see? What woke in your heart then? Why went you ever to Laurel in Dornan, and came not by your own road, upon the horses of Rohan, riding home in the morning? Then turning again to Frodo, he spoke in a quiet voice once more. To those questions I guess that you could make some answer, Frodo, son of Drogo, but not here or now, maybe. But lest you still should think my tale a vision, I will tell you this. The horn of Boromir at least returned in truth, and not in seeming. The horn came, but it was cloven in two, as it were by axe or sword. The shards came severally to shore. One was found among the reeds where watches of Gondor lay, northwards beyond the infalls of the Entwash. The other was found spinning on the flood by one who had an errand on the water. Strange chances, but murder will out, 'tis said. And now the horn of the elder son lies in 2 pieces upon the lap of Denethor, sitting in his high chair, waiting for news. And you can tell me nothing of the cleaving of the horn? No, I didn't know of it, said Frodo, but the day when you heard it blowing, if your reckoning is true, was the day when we parted, and I and my servant left the company. And now your tale fills me with dread. For if Boromir was then in peril and was slain, I must fear that all my companions perished too, and they were my kindred and my friends. Will you not put aside your doubt of me and let me go? I'm weary and full of grief and afraid, but I have a deed to do or to attempt before I too am slain, and the more need of haste if we 2 halflings are all that remain of our fellowship. Go back, Faramir, valiant captain of Gondor, and defend your city while you may, and let me go where my doom takes me. For me there is no comfort in our speech together, said Faramir, but you surely draw from it more dread than need be. Unless the people of Lorien themselves came to him, who arrayed Boromir as for a funeral? Not orcs or servants of the Nameless. Some of your company, I guess, live still. But whatever befell on the North March, you, Frodo, I doubt no longer. If hard days have made me any judge of men's words and faces, then I may make a guess at halflings. Though, and now he smiled, there is something strange about you, Frodo, an elvish air, maybe, but more lies upon our words together than I thought at first. I should now take you back to Minas Tirith to answer there to Denethor, and my life will justly be forfeit if I now choose a course that proves ill for my city. So I will not decide in haste what is to be done. Yet we must move hence without more delay. He sprang to his feet and issued some orders. At once the men who were gathered round him broke up into small groups and went off this way and that, vanishing quickly into the shadows of the rocks and trees. Soon only Madrun and Damrod remained. Now you, Frodo and Samwise, will come with me and my guards.
Alright, everyone, I'm gonna call into this live a little early. I'm actually a little tired, so I want to thank everyone for stopping by, and everyone continues to stop by. I definitely appreciate all y'all's support. Until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe out there.